Hello, kings and queens. This is a review for Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin is a thriller film directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Shyamalan has had a roller coaster of a career, so it's hard to predict what he's capable of these days, but I thought this movie was okay. It may be the most okay movie I've ever seen. It's got some interesting stuff going on. I want to talk about how this movie is essentially about the power of belief, and I want to talk about some of its performances. M. Night Shyamalan was at one point in time considered the successor to Steven Spielberg. He was the hottest upcoming director in the 90s when he directed The Sixth Sense, a psychological horror film that intertwined genuinely disturbing subject material with surprisingly sincere family drama. Shyamalan wrote and directed that film, and his accomplishments in it cannot be understated. He got great performances from very different actors across Haley Joel Osment, Bruce Willis, and Toni Collette. He managed the complex tone of the film that weaved horror themes, touching family moments, and comedic elements. It also helps he created one of the most memorable plot twists in narrative storytelling. These were the elements that made Shyamalan a household name. His dexterity in handling multiple tones made him seem like a wonder kid, much like Spielberg. Shyamalan went on to make Unbreakable and Signs. Both of these movies feature similar complex tones, family conflict, and of course, memorable plot twists. With these projects, the Shyamalan magic continued, but there was a growing sense he was a little one note. After these movies, it seemed the concern for novelty weighed heavily on Shyamalan's output, and he became obsessed with gimmicks, and that shallowness became evident in his work. Shyamalan has attributed his film's decline in quality to his hesitation to be pigeonholed as a director who only made thrillers. I don't know if I buy that. The Village, Lady in the Water, and The Happening were all thrillers, and notably some of Shyamalan's worst work. It seemed like each new project was innovating specifically in its ability to be completely terrible. Later, he left the thriller genre with After Earth and The Last Airbender, and these movies were notably bad even compared to his string of failures that preceded them. The Last Airbender is now known as one of the worst films ever made. It may be true Shyamalan's ventures outside of his home genre haven't gone well, but it's not like he was firing on all cylinders before that either. I think he's been too obsessed with gimmicks that lack the personal connection from his earlier work. Shyamalan's movies haven't been getting notably better, but they have gotten notably more profitable. The Visit, Split, and Old all made more than 10 times their original budget, so Shyamalan has found a niche in the industry to continue making whatever he wants. And whatever he wants to make tends to be thrillers, which Shyamalan has accepted as his one-note style. I think this might be a good thing, because it means Shyamalan can be in his comfort zone. If he's not worrying about his movie being a success, it may lead him to have a stronger attachment to his films and subsequently a higher quality as well. That's my hope for his career, and we may have gotten a glimpse of that in Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin's premise is succinctly stated in its trailer. A family vacationing in a cabin are beset by 4 intruders who tie them up and tell them they have to sacrifice someone in their family in order to prevent the impending apocalypse. The family doesn't believe the apocalypse is happening or that a sacrifice would change anything about it, so there's a back and forth of rationalizing and providing evidence for something that can't really be proved. Knock at the Cabin is based on a book called The Cabin at the End of the World, but it is worth noting the film makes 2 significant changes from the book, which arguably alters the entire point of the story. That said, I haven't actually read the book. I just read the synopsis on Wikipedia. Knock at the Cabin is essentially about the power of belief, and I'm glad I watched this movie because after seeing it, I realized most of Shyamalan's work is about this theme. The Sixth Sense asks if this kid really can see dead people. Unbreakable asks if this father is truly invincible. Signs asks if there is some cosmic coincidence to your life circumstance that prepared you for a specific moment. All of the Shyamalan movies that are worth watching are anchored by this conflict. Can you believe what's in front of you? Will you let yourself believe it? What would it mean if it were true? I find it a fascinating recurring question in Shyamalan's work because this theme is very obviously adjacent to religion, but he has never applied it in a religious context, at least not until now. Knock at the Cabin is the closest Shyamalan gets to making a movie about religious belief because the antagonists are fanatics who believe it's the end of the world. There are certainly plenty of religious fanatics who believe that in real life. The protagonists of this story are 2 gay men who have an adoptive daughter, which is another way of saying they are the perfect representation of individuals outside of religiosity. One of these men is a lawyer who relies on logical thinking and science-based evidence. He's naturally the one refuting the claims of the fanatics in this film, and the conflict between his character and the intruders is the essential draw of this film. It is rationality arguing against faith. I had a personal connection to this film because I found myself at the center point of those two conflicting entities. I've never considered myself religious. I have difficulty understanding the concept of faith or belief. I naturally gravitate to rational reasoning and logical arguments. While all that may be true, I have an unshakable sense that these things are not the key to understanding the universe. It feels like something is missing, and there are times where things click in a way that can't be explained by ideas born out of the Enlightenment. Knock at the Cabin tries to get you to that point of doubt and uncertainty, and I think it is successful at times. There is a scene where the intruders turn on the news to show the horrific events happening around the world due to the protagonist's inaction. The one that stuck with me the most was the first one, where a cell phone recording shows a massive tsunami hitting the shore of a city. I thought the depiction of this footage was eerily accurate. I'm used to seeing movies depict calamitous events with bystanders running and screaming and saying, "Oh, the humanity." It's always an exaggerated depiction. Now that we've lived with cameras in everyone's pocket for more than a decade, we know that's not actually what that scene looks like. As depicted in the movie, people don't scream or run in the face of terror. They stare silently at their undeniable and imminent doom. The unsettling quietness present while watching people get annihilated by a wall of water allows for the doubt you may have about the intruder's claims to seep into your consciousness. You're watching something horrific take place, so horrific you can't believe it, and a whisper enters your brain, maybe they're right. Maybe this is the end of the world. For that one scene, it felt like I was watching that tsunami hit the shore. I felt the fear the movie wanted me to feel. That might be because of the movie, or maybe it's because the apocalypse is pretty believable these days. Either way, Knock at the Cabin does a great job portraying the main characters struggling with holding onto their rational worldview and squaring it with the unbelievable devastation happening before their eyes. If that sounds interesting to you, that is the appeal of Knock at the Cabin. The other thing Knock at the Cabin has going for it is the performances from its cast. Shyamalan has reliably gotten great performances out of his actors, although there are obvious exceptions, so maybe I shouldn't have been surprised. The most notable is Dave Bautista, who continues to have a shockingly prosperous acting career. His character is the leader of the Fanatics, and it feels like a role tailor-made for him. He has an obvious physicality that is threatening, but beyond how he looks, every creative decision reinforces his character's gentle nature. I thought it was an interesting dynamic that this is basically a hostage situation, but the hostage takers are very reluctant about what they're doing. There's not a clear protagonist-antagonist situation because the threats of violence are never targeted toward the other party. I think that strange dynamic only worked because of the actors, and specifically Bautista. I also want to shout out Rupert Grint, aka Ron Weasley, who I haven't seen in a movie for a decade. He plays a very different character here. He's only in the movie for a little bit, but I enjoyed his contributions. Those are the two I wanted to highlight, but Knock at the Cabin is like any other Shyamalan movie in that its performances feel genuine. They are the source of humanity and connection in this film that is otherwise about weighty, abstract ideas. Shyamalan has always been good at connecting those things to actual people, and Knock at the Cabin is no exception. All of this sounds really great, but the one and fatal flaw of Knock at the Cabin is it doesn't ever progress past its initial premise. It leads with the conflict between believing the apocalypse and not believing it, and it basically restates that stalemate 4 times before coming to a lackluster conclusion. A conclusion that is very different from the book. I don't know what Shyamalan wanted to accomplish with the conclusion we see in this movie, other than ending his movie around 90 minutes and having a less depressing ending, I guess. I might say I was disappointed the movie didn't do more, but I didn't feel robbed or betrayed like I have with other Shyamalan twists. In fact, I'd say Knock at the Cabin doesn't really have a twist, which is unique for his work. I'd give Knock at the Cabin a 3 out of 5. It is an okay movie. It has a great premise, and it gets close to mining the value of its conflict, but it never gets too deep in anything interesting. Which means it also doesn't get too deep in anything embarrassing or gimmicky like Shyamalan's other work. I think it could have done more, but minute to minute, scene to scene, I enjoyed watching this movie. There's some things I could nitpick about its tension, like how there isn't really any, but I don't really see the point. Knock at the Cabin is a fine movie. In the context of Shyamalan's tumultuous career, I think it's a big improvement. Thank you for watching my review of Knock at the Cabin. If you liked this video, please leave a comment so I know you watched it, or hit the like button if it's easier. If you want me to keep making videos like this, consider donating to my Ko-fi page. The link is in the description. Ko-fi doesn't require a subscription. You can donate $1 one time, and I would appreciate it. If you don't want to donate, I just hope you'll leave a comment or like the video, and keep watching. Stay strong, Royals.